Hello and a very warm welcome to Skillsoft presents ETStudios HR Connect in association with ETHR World. I'm your host Hemanshi Tewari. Now in this session we're going to discuss about reskilling in the tech-driven world and shaping our workforce for tomorrow. For this session we are joined in by Shyam Upadhyay, who is VP HR at Intel. Shyam, it's a pleasure to have you here. We are also joined in by Divyesh, Sindhwaad, who is the country head and vice president at Skillsoft. Divyesh, thank you for joining in.
Thank you for having me here.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to discuss about reskilling in the tech-driven world. But before that, we are seeing so much of technological advancements these days. This is the era of reskilling. But how can HR leaders sort of keep up with these technological advancements and lead their teams, lead their organizations through this workforce transformation happening? Starting with you, Shyam.
Thank you. Great question. So I think we need to come to terms firstly with the fact that there are some fairly important transitions happening in our society. We can talk about many of them, but I think the two key ones that are relevant to the question you're asking is there is a generational transition that is happening. So you have a workforce that keeps shifting. Their expectations change, switch over time. So that's something that you need to watch out for. And then there is technology, just this unending barrage of technical change that you see around you.
Yeah.
As HR leaders, I think we need to keep a watch on both these areas. We are obviously not as technically proficient as most of the technologists are, so we rely greatly on them to help us decipher some of those changes that are happening around us. But from a generational point of view, I think we need to be a lot more prudent with the people that work with us. We have multiple generations in our workforce today. There is the baby boomer generation that is probably thinking more retirement, what do I do from here kind of aspirations with their lives. There are the incoming audience that is looking at better effectiveness in their lives. I want to work, but I also want to be socially responsible.
Yeah.
I also want to be healthy. I want to spend more time on my health. So you've got to kind of watch that as well. So we are watching both those places. I can obviously talk in more detail in terms of what we're doing with both of those. But I think for HR leaders, it's really important to keep your mind open to these two big transitions that are playing out as you think about today and the future as we move ahead.
All right, thank you. And we're going to talk about all of this in the later part of this session. But to you, Divyesh, same question. There's a lot of reskilling going on. We are talking about a lot of reskilling. We are talking about a lot of technological advancements, AI, IoT, 5G, and a lot of other things, right? So how can sort of organizations have that competitive edge in the market?
Yep. So interesting question. So if you look at it, I think today when you talk about competitive edge, a lot of factors, whether it is in terms of finance availability, technology, or any other resources, they are all becoming commodity, and are available to most organizations. But if there is one piece which is really driving the differentiation and helping organizations, capture the opportunities that are there in front of them, it's their people. And that's become a very clear differentiator, between why an organization succeeds while the other, may not be so. And that's where I think there is a lot of excitement that I see for HR, because HR is at the forefront, helping organizations, prepare, navigate some of these challenges, build those right capabilities, given the advancements in technologies and the disruptions that we are seeing. And it's not just in terms of how we work and operate, it's also in terms of business models which are getting transformed with AI. It's about how we do everything across the world of work, workplace, workforce, and that's where I see a lot of opportunity in front of the HR fraternity, and that level of impact that they can create, for businesses to become successful.
All right, thank you for that insight. But as we were talking about a lot of these technological advancements, to you, Shamsi, you are coming from the tech world, and we are seeing a lot of technological advancements. Same IoT, AI, 5G. Cloud computing was one of the technological advancement that we have been talking about for a long time. But how do you approach reskilling for such highly specialized roles?
Good question. You do a couple of things. when you think about this. You either build or you buy. Buying is obviously going back to the point that he was making, which is if people are your competitive advantage and that's sustained over time, you go out to the right places, you look for the right people. For instance, in our context or in our construct, hardware engineering is not necessarily something that people in India pursue a lot. We are a predominantly software country. So we do things to go to the best universities to pick up the best hardware people that are around who can actually work on that cutting edge technology. That's the most easy form of going about this, which is you buy. Then comes the piece of build. So how do you build? Because what you require now is the pace of change is so rapid that you, even with your existing workforce, you need to keep upgrading them for reskilling. There are two ways of dealing with that. One is you sensitize the employee that they need to keep focusing on reskilling. They know it as they're working, that the world around them is changing and the work that they need to do is changing. So they say, I want to go do a program. I want to go learn a new skill. As an employer, my job is to support. So you offer extended education, you offer training programs externally, all of that. So there's a whole menu of things that you can do there. Then there is stuff that you do internally, which is you look at your overall workforce and you say, okay, as an example, AI. AI has become a big thing. Yes, there is generative AI, but there are other applications that are now starting to come through with AI. AI is probably the tipping point where things start to materialize better. So then as a company, we start thinking, hey, what can we do with AI? So we have an AI skill academy that we run internally, where our employees can actually upgrade their skills. Again, more often than not on a voluntary basis. Sometimes it gets prescriptive because the job requires them to actually go learn that. But we have an academy that kind of runs this AI skill upgradation for everyone. And our intention, I'll remit myself to India here since we're talking in our context, is we have a goal within Intel in India that we want to reach a certain level of skill competence where we're covering enough employees who are getting skilled on AI so that they can start using AI more actively in their workplace. Because there is ChatGPT, there is an Intel GPT that we have internally for ourselves that we use, and there will be many user cases that will start coming up very soon. So it's a build strategy and a buy strategy. Buy is expensive, but you've got to do a lot of build as well because you've got to constantly upgrade your existing workforce as well.
All right, thank you for answering that question. There has always been a debate when it comes to build versus buy. Of course, you cannot buy everything, but of course, you cannot also build everything, which is what you just said. But coming to you, Divyesh, when it comes to these reskilling initiatives, when it comes to skilling our employees for these highly specialized roles and also for other roles as well, what are those technological advancements or innovations that companies can look at implementing to make their initiatives more effective and also to provide a safe and secure environment to their employees for such learning initiatives?
Sure. I think, it is mostly technology led if you look at it. And there is an increased focus in terms of driving material business outcomes. Okay. And I think a lot of exciting work that has happened with some of our customers and what we are doing has been in the cusp of these two areas, where you take the technology, look at the business problem, and try to marry the two to find the right approach to solving a certain problem which is there. Okay, and that's where I think AI has made things possible which were not earlier. So, for example, traditional learning, okay, we know during COVID times, a lot of organizations had to innovate and move away from that to digital, okay, to make sure that there is engagement, there is capability building which is happening and which continues. There's a lot of focus given what World Economic Forum says and the skills that are getting transformed and all of that around that skilling, reskilling area, continuing the build theme, okay. But digital content in its own is not the answer to everything, okay. So there are components given the nature of human beings and how we learn and how every individual is unique in their own way, okay. There are different modalities that come into picture. So that's where I think elements around practice, for example, is becoming very important, okay. Also helps in terms of reducing the scrap learning percentage. And that's, overall going to help organizations improve their ROI from learning investments and all of that. So whether it is practicing through AI-based simulations, like what we do for our customers with KC, our solution, okay, that allows them a safe, secure environment to role play, get some feedback instantly at the end of it, go back and replay a certain scenario and learn in the process, or providing them with various labs, okay, starting from Codecademy interactive labs that we offer, to challenge labs which are more gamified, to practice labs aligning to certifications which might be there, or sandboxes where they can, have an open playground to do whatever they want to, and build capabilities in the process. Okay, so these are some of the innovations that we are seeing, okay, that are actually helping organizations build that engagement, okay, do skilling in a format which is more appealing to people today, in a consumerized environment, in a format which is more relevant to the way we operate, and at the same time, drive those capabilities which are important for the business.
Yeah, all right. This is when we know what skills are required. We know when what is coming, right? We can create plans, we can create strategies for things we know that this is coming. But what about those future skills that we still don't know about, right? We need to prepare our employees for future skills also. So do you think, Shyam, that we can use AI in a way that it can predict future skills and we can actually help our employees to train with those skills and get them ready for the emerging rules?
It's a great question. And it's a deep question. Is AI ready to play the role of a predictive science to predict what the future is going to be? I don't think we've reached that stage of maturity as yet. AI is broadly still a very associative science. It's a great historian. I'm not sure it's a great predictor. It's a great historian that can also make connections with multiple things for you. So it's a great administrative assistant for you to learn things more quickly than you probably would have learned in the conventional way of learning. But the predictable element of AI, I think, is still questionable. What it can do, though, what it can do for sure, is it can give you associative areas where skills may be emerging that require more attention. So let's say you're doing machine learning. What are elements that are in the adjacencies around machine learning that may be important for you to know so that you can use machine learning as a skill set? Those are areas in which AI can give you some recommendations. Now, predicting for the future is obviously a very hard thing. If it wasn't, AI wouldn't have taken 30 years to come to where it has come to, where now people are saying, oh, okay, we can do. I mean, the first movie that got made on AI was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's taken 20 years for it to reach a maturation where you say, okay, now there's something in the predictive side with AI, with generative AI that's coming in. Predictive is probably the wrong word, but the generative AI that's coming in. So that's a hard act of how do you predict where it's going to go. I think what we need to do organizationally and business-wise is you need to keep all your antennas on, looking at the outside world to see where the puck is moving. It's not always easy to figure out where the puck is moving, but you've got to keep asking yourself, okay, what is the next big thing that's happening out there where I need probably a small set of employees that are focused in that area so that they're either skilling up or they're looking at that business opportunity. I think that's the best way to proceed in this direction. Otherwise, it's very hard to predict.
We cannot totally depend on AI is what you are saying. We need to have a human oversight.
Sure.
Of course, that's the case. But
just to add there, is that I think AI can help us get there quickly. So for example, it may not be able to predict, to your point, Shyam. Okay, and absolutely correct. But then where I think AI is playing a role is basically giving you those insights based on behaviors. Okay, so like Shyam mentioned, what is it that for example, learners are searching for? What are those buzzwords which are there? What are the parallels? For example, there are 100 data scientists who are there. What are they learning? And if I am the 101st data scientist, okay, and the system knows about it, can it predict and can it recommend, not predict, but recommend, saying that, okay, based on the behavior of these 100 data scientists, here is what you might want to look at. Okay, and that's where I think it is actually moving the needle slightly. We are not there 100% to Shyam's point, but then slowly, gradually, there are these small things and nudges which are actually helping us use AI by way of platform, by way of intelligence, and it is learning, it is growing as we speak, right? That is how it is.
Yeah, no, of course, yes, as per you both, AI can give us the data sets. it's our job to read those data in a way that can be helpful to us in multiple ways. This is what we have been doing, right? AI gives us the data sets. Like you said, it's a historian. It covers all the data. Now it's our job at this point in time, at least, it's a human job to kind of read those data and make sense of it, basically. But on that note, whenever we are using any technology for the reskilling initiatives, how do we sort of measure that? Shyam earlier said that this is the bigger question, because everyone asks this question, how to measure the effectiveness of the reskilling initiatives. But, how to do that effectively, if I ask to you, Divyesh, how can we measure that effectively? On what metrics should we measure the effectiveness of any reskilling program?
Yep. So this is again, and I like putting it across this way, that this is the money question, right? Because this is where the organization realizes the ROI. Okay, because at the end of the day, metrics matter. And I think from an approach point of view, metrics have to be built in as part of the design. Okay, you need to know where you are heading, where you want to reach, as you launch various learning, reskilling programs in an organization. And I'll maybe lean on a couple of examples, okay, to talk about it. So, for example, one of our customers ran a women in leadership program, okay, to drive the kind of diversity related numbers that they wanted, okay, by actually taking them through a coaching intervention and looking at how many of these women leaders are actually getting promoted at the end of the day based on the learnings, and then the cycle that they go through from a learning point of view and all of that. And it actually helped them get those numbers that they were looking for. But then why did they manage to get it? It wasn't a program just for the sake of it to create that tick in the box, but rather it was designed to get the women leaders from there where they are to where they want them to be. And with that purposeful intervention and having those milestone checks and all of that, they were able to drive those outcomes which are there. Speed to market is another area. Okay, when we look at a lot of these SIs, and IT services organizations, a lot of them actually go to campus for hiring talent. Okay, time to productivity for that talent is a big area that everybody is focused on across the industry. And that's where again, with a clear metric in terms of what is the shrinkage in time that I could manage with the help of a program. Okay, what is the kind of personalization that I could bring in based on the roles that we are going to offer those people after they get on board. Okay, because a lot of these journeys actually start even before the candidates are onboarded. Okay, and then driving those purposeful interventions. Like, for example, what we do is we look at actually discovering with the customer in terms of what are those actual projects that these folks are going to be working on. So if 4 folks out of them, out of maybe 100, are going to work on a project which is on an infrastructure management or a new cloud platform build up or something like that, can we mirror that and give them capstone projects which are actually aligned to that? So as they are learning with that orientation, and their productivity is, immediately, there the moment they start, because they've already gone through some bit of rigor in the same thing, or it is not a switch from I did a library project and now I'm building a a portal on real estate. So that is where things matter. And intelligently, adding those elements around mentoring sessions, office hours, or coaching element and all of that. Okay, it could be as simple as, having a buddy or a mentor from within the team, okay, who is a senior resource, work with them. These are not new things, but the way you design it and the way you build that purpose with that end goal in mind, you will be able to drive the outcomes. So I think matrix is absolutely important, but it will not be a one-size-fits-all approach. It will have to go beyond participation rates. It will have to go beyond the number of hours that people have spent in learning. And it will have to go basically into areas where what kind of skill development we have done. Okay, where have we taken the learner from a journey point of view, from where they were to where they are, and how has it impacted the business?
Let me just add, because these are great examples, and kind of go and amplify a little bit on that diversity angle, because that's something that a lot of companies are doing. So there are throughput indicators, hours, mentoring, time, all of that. And there are end indicators, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the throughput indicators.
So true.
And then start assuming that that should actually move the needle, everything should be fine. But the reality is, you've got to look at the end indicators, and those come over time. They don't happen immediately as soon as the training is delivered or the upskilling is delivered. They don't happen immediately. Second, I think a lot of business leaders and HR leaders need to get away from this notion that a training program's ROI and the throughput indicator is not good enough for us to do anything more in this space. Because what happens is that training or upskilling alone does not lead to the advancement that you're looking for in terms of the outcomes. The whole ecosystem needs to move.
Yeah.
Like example, diversity, female representation, more senior leaders. You've got to have promotion goals. You've got to have affordability. You've got to look after those people in terms of turnover. You can't just keep saying, I'll do this training program and everything else tomorrow morning should be fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So HR professionals and business leaders, I may argue, need to start getting more real about the upskilling alone not delivering what you're seeking. Because that's where a lot of us get wrapped up with the ROI. Oh, it's not giving me what I want right now immediately. I don't want to do this. But the answer to that question is, do it now and figure out how you lead up to where you need to get to by changing the other pieces around.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely perfect point. That brings me to my next question, that we are talking about the current skill gap, and we are all kind of making our programs or personalizing our reskilling programs to sort of build that current skill gap. But we are talking about shaping future leaders, right? What about after few years? Like we have spoken about it in earlier question also, that current skill gap is there, but we need to create future leaders as well. So what are you doing, or how can organizations ensure that meanwhile, like while they are bridging their current skill gap, they're also preparing or shaping the future leader or shaping the future workforce?
It's a great question. A few things, and this again goes back, if I had to use a common HR term, this goes back to, you need to create an organization that's learning all the time, or learning organization as it's called. And that's a culture that you need to create in the environment. How do you create that culture? One way of doing it, and we do a lot of this, is you do a paid forward kind of culture, right? Which is, if somebody has achieved what they've achieved by learning, upskilling, going through a variety of experiences to get to where they've got to, we expect them to mentor, guide, coach, and we measure them to some of those things. We also run a lot of simulation stuff internally in our environment. So I'll give example of Intel. I run 2 programs across the region. One focused on growing some of our budding leaders into executives, into VPs and above, which is the senior most leadership in the company, and our technical leaders into distinguished engineers, principal engineers. What are we doing with that? We're doing 2 things. We are creating a soapbox where people can play in. You're creating an environment where people can play in. And I'm putting a lot of scaffolding around it, with more leaders coming in, doing a paid forward, explaining to them their journey, trying to inspire them with their journey, offering them tips and coaching, giving them simulative environments that people can work on. So you've got to create a culture broadly in a company that keeps harping on the necessity to give back to the community if you've achieved what you've achieved. So you keep growing the next set of leaders, and to create a mind share that you are actually a learning organization. Because otherwise, you can very easily get caught up in, oh, I know this really well, I'll keep doing this, and for the next 30 years, I'm in a good place. That doesn't typically happen because the world's changing as quickly as it is.
Yeah, rightly put. But when we are talking about shaping our tomorrow's workforce, technical skills are important, of course, but more so soft skills, right? So there should be a balance between technical skills and soft skills. So how are you keeping that sort of balance and preparing the leaders of tomorrow?
It's a great question. In most technology companies, a lot of people ignore this aspect. And that is problematic. Because there are some very basic things in life that don't change, which is your ability to articulate a problem, offer a solution to that problem, and explain it in a manner that can even be understood by a 5-year-old. These are skills that have never changed in the history of mankind. This is, as far back as mankind goes, these skills are required. We sometimes are so caught up in learning the new technologies that we forget that these are things that matter hugely. So we put a lot of emphasis on soft skills. Now, easy way of doing soft skills, go to training program, learn how to communicate, join Toastmasters club, do all of that. But what we do a lot of is we create a lot of simulative environments where people get to practice these skills on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to impress upon engineers sometimes that this is really important when you're working with technologies, because they think the best way of getting forward is to learn technology, which is significantly true, but you don't get to a level of seniority and leadership until you have those right soft skills. So that's something that's always a work in progress. I can't claim that we can declare victory and we've done the best over there, but it's something that you just have to keep re-emphasizing and keep showcasing the importance for.
Yeah. No, I think you've said it, Shyam, and that's where exactly, from the other side of the table. Okay, that's where we've had a lot of investments and innovation coming up. So ability to basically offer off-the-shelf simulations, which can help people improve in certain software areas or power skill areas by doing it. Okay, because theory on one side, softer skills cannot be applied directly. It needs a little bit of practice and grooming, and that's where these simulators like KC that we have actually bring in that ability to practice in a safe environment and apply it and all of that, build their confidence in a way and everything. And plus, if you look at even research, what it suggests is 8 out of the 10 skills that World Economic Forum suggests are going to be most important in 2030 are actually these power skills. Okay, and that's the fact. And I think the area that I'm personally thinking maybe we are not doing so much justice to is the fact that the awareness about this is still not percolating to the crowd when it comes to technology professionals or any industry for that matter, not just in tech industry but even in other industries. I could be from a research background in a healthcare or a pharma company, and then I can still have those challenges in terms of just sticking to my field or my specialty, and rather than looking at other elements and all of that. But then there is a glass ceiling to it. Until and unless you can build that overall holistic capability in terms of managing people, looking at it from a business point of view, what impact are you creating, how are you navigating certain challenges, and all of those. And that's where I think these skills become extremely important as AI will take over a lot of these mundane, level 1 to 3 jobs. Coding also, for that matter, right? It says that, okay, after a while, it's going to be the coding is going to happen on its own, or with very little human intervention. All of these programmers will have to elevate to a certain level where they can, be a part of the system, human in the loop. But then a lot of that work that they are doing right now will be done by, technology. And what they'll have to do is elevate to the next level, which is where these things become very, very important.
If I may just add a couple of more things, and one would be an appeal in some sense, since we're doing a studio session here. We spend a lot of time amongst our technologists on knowing our story. Do I know my skill? You go work on that skill, technical skill a lot. We are not spending as much time asking ourselves, am I able to tell my story well? That I think is a big gap. It's something that we need to get conscious about. And the appeal is engineering schools particularly. It will serve them well if they start thinking about focusing on some of these softer skills, because when we go out to recruit and hire, we often find people who are really good but are not necessarily in simulative environments very good at teamwork, are not particularly communicative. So most of the problems in the world are not solved just by knowing your story. There's a lot of how do you persuade people that story is the story you need to know. So I think if we did a little bit like finishing school with engineering schools, it'll be nice where people are focusing on some of these softer aspects.
Very rightly said. Everyone has a story, but not everyone is a good storyteller. And this is what makes the difference. Well, thank you so much for sharing those views. And as we are wrapping up this conversation, I want to understand from both of you, like what trends, 2 or 3 trends are you seeing in this space that we can look at in the upcoming few years? Starting with you, Divyesh.
Okay. So I think, the number one thing is in terms of this AI being the buzzword, right? A lot of people want to implement tools and technologies which have AI in it. Okay. But I think when I look at it from a HR or learning, leaders perspective, What's really important is actually to take a step back and realize that, okay, how is it working as part of my ecosystem, like Shyam mentioned. Overall, a lot of other components have to come in and play in a way that it all creates that story that we are trying to do and then give us the outcome which is there. So that's an area that is, I think, from a trend point of view, not picking up as much it is. Okay, but then that's an area that I would love to see pick up. Okay, in terms of simplifying this ecosystem of reskilling and upskilling, which is important. Okay, apart from that, I think some of the trends are still in the space of leveraging the basics, in terms of personalizing the journeys, curation. Okay, there is a lot of engagement, consumerization of platforms and all of those. So those trends remain. Okay, but I think we are at that place now where we'll soon see it going to a different level when it comes to driving, the real business outcomes. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, your perspective, Shyam.
I'd add two things, and I agree with most of what was said here. I think we need to teach both ourselves and our people to be more resilient, because, and the parallel I'll draw is, all the horse carriage drivers, when the steam engine came, became jobless.
Yeah.
There is a big fear that with AI's emergence, a lot of people are going to be jobless.
Yeah.
I think that fear is a little unfounded, but to suggest that AI will not make us more efficient and squeeze out some of the transactional stuff is wrong. There will be some of the transactional stuff that will get squeezed out, which means we have to open up to the whole notion of what you've been talking about in the last 30 minutes, which is reskilling.
Yeah.
Those horse carriage riders had jobs eventually. They were not the same jobs.
Yeah.
Similarly, we'll have people whose jobs will get impacted by AI in a meaningful way, but they will have jobs because they will reskill. So it's really important for us to reskill and do that. Second, with AI particularly, I think we should have healthy respect for AI, but not get too caught up in assuming that everything that AI is doing is fantastic. Because there is an element of responsible AI that is starting to emerge. Right? One is, how much do you really use AI?
Yeah.
A. B, all these large language models that are being trained also have their own biases.
Yeah.
And you've got to be careful in not assuming that those are maxims of life that you will actually go and believe and implement in the way it's being described. So some amount of healthy disrespect for AI is a good thing. A little bit of focus on what is responsible AI is important for us to be focusing on. Learning to be resilient, obviously, is really important.
Yeah, of course. Building a resilient and adaptable workforce and keeping that sort of boundary with AI where you do not compromise with your own sense, with your own oversight, right? And you're not totally dependent on AI. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for having this brilliant conversation. Really great insights, some contrasting views, but at the end of the day, it was a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, stay tuned for more such videos only at Skillsoft presents ETStudios HR Connect in association with ETHR World.